The smell of sizzling bacon and fresh brewed coffee usually filled Leo's diner, a small, unassuming place tucked away on a quiet street in Memphis, Tennessee. But for Leo Vance, the young man behind the counter, it often smelled more like dreams. Dreams that were currently simmering, not quite boiling. He loved his diner, loved the steady stream of regulars who called him by name, and praised his hash browns. But deep down, Leo yearned for something more. He wanted to create food that wasn't just good, but legendary. Food that would make people stop, close their eyes, and feel a jolt of pure, unadulterated joy. Leo was a chef born and bred. His grandmother, a fiery southern cook, had taught him everything, from the perfect roux to the secret of a truly fluffy biscuit. He had inherited her passion, her almost obsessive dedication to flavor. But his diner, while cozy and beloved by the locals, wasn't exactly the stage for culinary masterpieces. It was more a symphony of comfort, food a reliable hum in the background of everyday life. His true passion, however, wasn't just for food. It was for music, specifically one kind of music and one artist above all others, Elvis Presley. Leo had grown up on Elvis's records, worn out the grooves on Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. Imagine the King's magnetic stage presence. He had Elvis posters tacked up in his tiny apartment above the diner, an old record player that constantly spun his albums, and even a well-loved, slightly faded blue suede jacket he'd bought at a thrift store. For Leo, Elvis wasn't just a singer. He was an icon, a force of nature, a legend, who had truly tasted life and sung about it with every fiber of his being. Sometimes, while flipping pancakes or stirring a pot of chili, Leo would hum along to "Can't Help Falling in Love," his mind drifting. He'd imagine Elvis walking into his diner, perhaps on a late night, looking for a quiet bite. What would he cook for him? What sandwich could possibly be worthy of the king? It was a recurring fantasy, a comforting, impossible thought, even on the slowest of Tuesdays. One particular Tuesday, the fantasy felt more real than usual. The morning rush had died down, leaving Leo with only a few lingering customers nursing their coffee. He wiped down the counter, the faint sound of Heartbreak Hotel drifting from the ancient jukebox in the corner. He pictured Elvis, not the flashy superstar, but the man from Memphis, the one who loved simple pleasures, a good home-cooked meal. "You look lost in thought, Leo," said old Mr. Henderson, perched on his usual stool, a newspaper open before him. "Dreaming of culinary glory again?" Leo chuckled. "Always, Mr. Henderson. Today I was just wondering what I'd make for Elvis if he ever walked through that door." Mr. Henderson snorted good-naturedly. "Peanut butter and banana fried. Of course, everyone knows that." "Too simple," Leo declared, leaning against the counter. "It has to be more than that. It has to encapsulate him, his charisma, his generosity, his power, his soul. It has to be a symphony of flavors, something that makes him feel understood." He waved his hands emphatically, spilling a few drops of water from his rag. "It needs to be a legend in itself." Mr. Henderson just shook his head, a smile playing on his lips. "You're a good kid, Leo, and your BLT is legendary enough for me." Leo smiled back, but his mind was already racing. He knew the king's famous sandwich choice, of course, but Elvis was more than just peanut butter and banana. He was Southern comfort, Memphis heat, a touch of rock and roll rebellion, and a whole lot of soul. How could a sandwich capture all that? It felt like an impossible task, a delicious riddle that only he, perhaps, could solve. He imagined Elvis taking a bite, his eyes widening, a slow smile spreading across his face. That was the dream. That was the feeling Leo wanted to create. Not just for Elvis, but for anyone who tasted his food. He wanted his food to evoke emotion, to tell a story. He spent the rest of the day in a haze of inspiration, absent-mindedly pouring coffee, his mind miles away, somewhere between Graceland and his own small, well-loved kitchen. He started jotting down notes on a napkin. Golden fried bread? Yes, but what kind? The peanut butter, of course, but what else? Bananas, sure, but caramelized, roasted, and what about a savory element? Bacon, yes, but a special kind, candied, smoked. His regular customers used to Leo's food-fueled musings. Just let him be. They knew that when Leo got that faraway look in his eyes, something delicious was brewing in his imagination. They just hoped it would eventually make it onto their plates as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the diner. Leo put a fresh Elvis record on the jukebox. Suspicious minds filled the air, the powerful vocals echoing his own restless thoughts. He stood by the griddle staring at its polished surface, seeing not just a flat piece of metal but a canvas. Canvas for a sandwich that didn't exist yet. A sandwich that could maybe, just maybe, bridge the gap between his small diner and the legend himself. The idea, once a comforting fantasy, now felt like a seed planted deep in his heart, ready to sprout. He felt a nervous flutter in his stomach. What if the impossible wasn't so impossible after all? The next few days at Leo's diner were a blur of regular orders and irregular daydreams. Leo continued to doodle sandwich ideas on order pads, his mind constantly buzzing with flavors and textures. His regulars joked that he was working on his Elvis magnum opus, and he just smiled, a secret hope blossoming in his chest. The dream of cooking for Elvis remained just that, a dream beautiful but distant then. A whisper started making its way through Memphis. Began subtly a hushed conversation at the next table. A snippet heard on the local radio, a rumor that seemed to float on the humid summer air. Elvis Presley, the king himself, was coming in town. This was different. He was supposedly attending a private charity gala, a discreet event for a cause close to his heart. The details were scarce guarded by a veil of secrecy that only made the rumors more tantalizing. Leo first heard it from Brenda, his oldest and most talkative regular, who came in every morning for a stack of buttermilk pancakes. "Leo, have you heard?" she whispered conspiratorially, leaning over the counter. "They say the king is coming back for that children's hospital fundraiser." Leo almost dropped his coffee pot. "Elvis, really, for the gala?" Brenda nodded vigorously. "That's what everyone's saying. And get this, a friend of my cousin's who works at the hotel where it's happening said they're looking for someone to cook a special late-night meal for him, something unique, not just the regular banquet stuff." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. Late-night meal, something unique. This wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a blaring trumpet call directly to his soul. He tried to act casual, wiping down the counter with a cloth that suddenly felt inadequate for the momentous news. "Oh, really? That's interesting." Brenda, however, was not easily fooled. She saw the light ignite in his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hands. "You're thinking what I'm thinking, aren't you, Leo? Your famous Elvis sandwich. This is your chance." He laughed nervously. "Brenda, I'm just a humble diner cook. They'd go for some fancy 5-star chef, surely." "Nonsense," she scoffed, waving her fork. "Elvis is a man of the people. He likes real food, from real places. And besides, I heard they're not looking for fancy, they're looking for heart. Someone who understands comfort, but with a twist, someone who can capture the Memphis spirit." He kept burning the toast, forgetting orders, his mind consumed by the possibility. Was this truly it? The universe, or perhaps just Memphis gossip, was aligning to give him his impossible dream. He stayed late after closing, cleaning the kitchen until it sparkled, then sat at a counter stool, the diner dark and quiet around him. He pulled out his notebook, filled with scribbled ideas, and began to flip through them. He thought about the kind of sandwich Elvis would appreciate, not a delicate artistic construction, but something substantial, full of flavor, maybe a little indulgent. Something that would bring a smile to his face after a long night of charity work and dazzling fans. He thought about Elvis's famous appetite, his love for Southern cooking, his grounding in Memphis. The whisper grew louder over the next few days. Local newspapers mentioned the king's rumored return, though no official condemnation came, but the buzz was undeniable. Leo heard more details. The meal was indeed meant to be a special private offering, a gesture of gratitude for his participation in the gala. The hotel staff, sworn to secrecy, were quietly reaching out to local unassuming establishments, seeking unique culinary talents, people who could create something truly special, something with soul. They weren't looking for celebrity chefs, they were looking for authenticity. This was it. This was his shot. The next morning, as the sun streamed through the diner windows, Leo made a decision. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking slightly. He didn't know who to call or where to even start, but he had an idea. He remembered a story Brenda had told him about how she once helped organize a small community event that Elvis had briefly attended years ago. She had a contact, a distant relative who worked in public relations, someone who occasionally helped with local events involving, well, important figures. He dialed Brenda, his voice brimming with a mixture of excitement and terror. "Brenda, about what you said yesterday about Elvis. Do you still have that number for your cousin's friend?" Brenda, always one step ahead, just chuckled. "Already on it, Leo. I knew you'd come around. I told her all about your Elvis obsession and your amazing sandwich ideas," she said. "To expect a call. Be ready." Cold wave of fear, then a hot flush of exhilaration washed over Leo. Brenda had gone ahead and put his name out there. He was both thrilled and utterly terrified. What if he failed? What if his sandwich wasn't good enough? What if he embarrassed himself? He looked around his small diner at the worn counter, the comfortable booths, the familiar smells. This place was his life, his sanctuary. And now it felt like a springboard ready to launch him into the biggest challenge of his life. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. This wasn't just about making a good sandwich anymore. It was about fulfilling a dream. It was about making history in his own small, delicious way. The whisper had become a roar in his ears. The king was coming and Leo Vance was going to cook for him. The phone call came 2 days later, just as Leo was wiping down the griddle after the lunch rush. The number was unfamiliar, starting with a 202 area code, not a local Memphis one. His hand trembled as he answered. "Leo Vance." A crisp, professional voice inquired. "My name is Eleanor Sterling. I'm with the Foundation for Children's Health. We're organizing a private event for Mr. Presley next week. And your name came highly recommended for a special culinary contribution." Leo's heart leaped into his throat. Yes. This is Leo. Thank you for calling, MS Sterling. I'd be honored." "Excellent," she continued, her voice all business. "We're looking for a very specific type of late-night offering. Something comforting yet extraordinary. Mr. Presley has a long day ahead of him, and we want to ensure he ends it with a truly memorable taste of Memphis." There was a slight pause, as if she was trying to politely phrase, "Elvis superfan." Leo chuckled. "You could say that, ma'am. I've always dreamed of cooking for the king." "Well, Mr. Vance, your dream might be closer than you think. We're inviting a select few local chefs to submit a concept for a unique samour. It needs to be portobello. Dix to be portobello." This was precisely what Leo had been musing about for months. He felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with a healthy dose of fear. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was a high-stakes culinary competition. "I understand," Leo said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What are the guidelines and the deadline?" He had 3 days to submit a detailed recipe, a brief explanation of his concept, and a small, non-perishable sample of any unique ingredients. "If applicable, we'll review all submissions," she explained. "And if yours is chosen, you'll be notified within 24 hours. The winning chef will then be asked to prepare a batch of these sandwiches for the event." Under strict security and discretion, this wasn't just any event. This was truly top secret, high-level stuff. It made the challenge even more exhilarating. After the call ended, Leo stood in the quiet diner, the receiver still clutched in his hand. He looked around his simple kitchen, his familiar griddle, his well-used pots and pans. Could he really do this? Could he, Leo Vance, the humble owner of Leo's Diner, create a sandwich worthy of Elvis Presley. He took a deep breath, then another. He had to. This was his chance, not just to cook for Elvis, but to prove to himself that his culinary dreams weren't just idle fantasies. They were real, tangible, and achievable. He started immediately, pulled out a fresh notepad, pushed aside thoughts of doubt, and focused solely on Elvis. What did Elvis represent? Southern roots, comfort, warmth, a touch of indulgence, rock and roll, energy, a bit of rebellion, something unexpected, charisma, a bold, unforgettable presence, humility. Despite his fame, he was still a Memphis boy. He thought about the classic peanut butter and banana sandwich. It was iconic, but too literal. He needed to elevate it, transform it into something new while respecting its roots. He spent the rest of the day and night in a culinary frenzy. He dug out old cookbooks, researched Southern ingredients, and even listened to Elvis's gospel albums, trying to tap into the deeper, soulful side of the king. His first idea was a deconstructed PB&B with candied bacon and a spiced banana compote on brioche. He tried it, but it felt too fancy, not Elvis. Enough, too much like something from a high-end restaurant, not a late-night comfort food. Next, he tried a savory version incorporating a smoky pulled pork with a peanut-based sauce and grilled plantains. It was delicious, but it wasn't a sandwich in the traditional. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe his affinity for Elvis's tastes wasn't enough. He crumbled up another piece of paper. He paced the diner, the silence of the night pressing in on him. He picked up his worn blue suede jacket. Feeling the soft fabric, he looked at his Elvis posters, at the king's smiling face. What would truly make Elvis happy after a long night? Something familiar yet surprising. Something that felt like home, but with a spark of genius. He remembered a story he'd read about Elvis loving grilled cheese as a kid and bacon. He loved bacon, and of course peanut butter and bananas. How to combine them without it being a chaotic mess. He sank into a booth feeling exhausted but unwilling to give up. He closed his eyes, picturing Elvis. He saw his smile, his energetic movements, his humble kindness, and then an image flashed in his mind. Elvis, sitting badged, tired but content, taking a bite of something rich, comforting, and utterly satisfying. Not fancy, real. A sudden idea sparked. What if he focused on the texture and experience rather than just the ingredients? What if the bread was key? Not just fried, but something almost like French toast, but savory. And the filling, it needed to be creamy, crunchy, sweet, and salty. All at once he bolted upright, a new energy coursing through him. He saw it now. Not a straightforward sandwich. Pie? The trait now. Not a straightforward sandwich, but a Leod experience. This has more than 2 days left to perfect it. The call to arms had been answered. The next 2 days were a whirlwind, a blur of ingredients, sizzling pans, and endless tasting. Leo transformed his diner kitchen into a culinary laboratory. He taped up his notes, ideas, and sketches all over the stainless steel walls, a chaotic mosaic of inspiration. He barely slept, fueled by copious amounts of coffee and an unyielding determination. His first breakthrough came with the bread. Traditional white bread, fried, was too simple. Brioche was too rich. He needed something that could hold up to the intense flavors. Something substantial, but still soft. He experimented with challah bread, then a thicker-cut sourdough, finally settling on a custom-baked, slightly sweet and dense buttermilk bread, brushed with a hint of maple syrup before toasting. This would be the kind of butter. He roasted his own peanuts, then ground them with a touch of honey, a pinch of sea salt, and a secret ingredient, a whisper of smoked paprika. This gave the peanut butter a depth, a subtle warmth that was both familiar and exciting. He called it smoky soul butter. The bananas posed a challenge. Simply sliced and fried. He tried caramelizing them, but they became too sweet and mushy. Then he remembered Elvis's love for grilled foods. He decided to grill thick slices of ripe banana, giving them a slight char and a smoky sweetness. bringing out their natural sugars without over-sweetening them. But what about the king's charisma? The bold, unforgettable presence. This was where the savory element came in. Bacon, of course, but not just any bacon. He sourced thick-cut artisanal bacon from a local farm and candied it in a mixture of brown sugar, cayenne pepper, and a dash of bourbon. This rock and roll bacon was crispy, sweet, spicy, and smoky all at once. A true explosion of flavor that hinted at Elvis's wild side. He started assembling his creations, trying different ratios, different layering technique. He toasted the buttermilk bread on the griddle until golden and slightly crisp. On one slice, he spread a generous layer of smoky sole butter. On the other, he spread a thin layer of cream cheese, infused with a touch of vanilla bean, a subtle nod to the creamy richness he felt Elvis exuded. He layered the grilled bananas on the cream cheese side, then added a generous amount of the candied bacon. He pressed the two halves together, the aromas filling the kitchen. He took his first bite. It was good, very good. The sweet, salty, smoky, creamy, crunchy elements were all there, but it wasn't legendary. It didn't make him stop, close his eyes, and feel that jolt of pure joy he was aiming for. It was missing something, a spark, a flourish. Frustration mounted. He had tried dozens of variations. He walked into the quiet dining area, the Elvis jukebox silently waiting. He put on "Love Me Tender," letting the soft, soulful melody wash over him. He closed his eyes, imagining the king singing it, his voice full of passion and tenderness. Tenderness, that was it. His sandwich was bold, yes, but was it tender? Was it heartwarming? It needed an element that spoke to Elvis's generosity, his warmth. He walked back into the kitchen, his mind racing tenderness. A soft, warm core. He looked at the bacon, the bananas. What if the creamy element wasn't just on one side? What if it was inside the peanut butter? He thought about the molten lava cake concept, but applied to a sandwich. He needed something gooey, comforting. He looked at a jar of marshmallow fluff. No, too sweet, too childish. Then it hit him. A rich, creamy, slightly sweet filling that would melt when heated. What if he incorporated a touch of warm melted butter, or even a touch of whipped cream cheese, into the peanut butter mix, or a creamy custard? He had an epiphany. He would make a special, very soft, almost custard-like, spread for the center. He mixed a small amount of mascarpone cheese with a touch of condensed milk and a tiny hint of bourbon vanilla. This would be the heartbreak heaven core. It wasn't too sweet, but it was incredibly creamy and luxurious. He reassembled the sandwich. Buttermilk bread, one side with smoky sole butter mixed with a tiny bit of the mascarpone blend. The other with grilled bananas and rock and roll bacon. In the very center, he carefully piped a small amount of the heartbreak heaven core. Then the final, crucial step. Instead of just pan frying, he decided to grill the sandwich, like a classic grilled cheese, slowly letting the bread turn golden and crisp, and allowing the inside to become a warm, melty symphony. He took a bite. His eyes widened. A slow smile spread across his face. He closed his eyes. Crunch of the bread, the saltiness of the bacon, the sweetness of the banana, the richness of the peanut butter, and that unexpected heavenly creamy core that melted on his tongue. It was bold. It was comforting. It was surprising. It was southern. It was rock and roll. And it was undeniably soulful. It was Elvis. "King's comfort," he whispered, a triumphant grin on his face. This was it. This was the sandwich he had found his legend. He spent the rest of the night meticulously documenting the recipe, writing a passionate explanation of how each ingredient and step embodied the spirit of Elvis. Carefully prepared a small vacuum-sealed sample of his smoky sole butter and rock and roll bacon to send with his submission. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft glow through the diner windows, Leo felt an exhaustion he hadn't known possible, but also a deep, profound sense of accomplishment. He had poured his heart and soul into that sandwich, every ounce of his admiration for Elvis, every culinary skill he possessed. Now all he could do was wait. The culinary quest was complete. The king's verdict awaited. Leo spent the last few hours before the submission deadline in a state of nervous exhilaration. He reread his concept explanation for the king's comfort at least a dozen times, checking for typos, refining his description. He wanted to make sure his passion, his reverence for Elvis truly shone through. His recipe detailed the specific buttermilk bread, the house-made smoky soul butter with its hint of smoked paprika, the bourbon candied rock and roll bacon, the perfectly grilled bananas, and the surprising creamy heartbreak heaven mascarpone core. He emphasized the technique of slow grilling the sandwich to achieve the perfect melty interior and crispy exterior. He even added a note about serving it with a small side of spiced honey for drizzling if one desired an extra layer of decadence. He carefully packaged his submission, the neatly typed recipe, the heartfelt concept explanation, and the small sealed jars of his special peanut butter and candied bacon meticulously labeled. He double-checked the address and the submission time. He was ready. As he walked the few blocks to the designated submission point, a discreet office building downtown, his heart hammered. Other chefs, looking equally nervous or supremely confident, were also entering and exiting. Some carried elaborate containers, hinting at complex, multi-layered dishes. Leo's simple, humble package felt almost out of place, but he held his head high. His sandwich had soul. That was what mattered. He handed over his package to a stern-faced assistant. "Leo Vance, for the King's Comfort sandwich," he stated, his voice a little hoarse with nerves. The assistant nodded, added his package to a growing pile, and gave him a curt "Thank you." No fanfare, no special treatment. Just the quiet, professional process. The waiting began, and it was agonizing. Every phone ring made him jump. Every knock on the diner door sent a jolt through him. He found himself pacing, cleaning things that were already clean, and humming Elvis tunes with an intensity that verged on obsession. His regulars noticed. "Still waiting on that call, Leo?" Mr. Henderson asked kindly, stirring his coffee. "It's torture, Mr. Henderson. I poured everything into that sandwich, every dream, every late night. It's not just food, it's a piece of my heart." Brenda gave him a comforting pat on the arm. "They'll see it, honey. They'll taste it. Just keep cooking. Good things come to those who wait," but waiting was the hardest part. He imagined a panel of sophisticated food critics, perhaps even Elvis's personal chef, tasting his creation. Would they understand it? Would they appreciate the nuances, the story he tried to tell with each bite? Or would they just dismiss it as another crocky take on a classic? He even started to second-guess himself. Maybe the smoked paprika was too much. Maybe the bourbon candied bacon was too one-dimensional. He fought against the tide of self-doubt, reminding himself of that moment of pure eureka, that feeling of knowing he had finally nailed it. The hour stretched into a day. He tried to busy himself with routine, but his mind was miles away at the secret tasting event, hoping for a positive reaction. He closed the diner early, unable to focus. He went upstairs to his apartment, put on Jailhouse Rock, something energetic to ward off the gloom. Just as he was about to give up hope, to resign himself to the idea that his dream wasn't meant to be, his phone rang. It was late, almost midnight. The unknown number flashed again. His heart stopped. He picked it up on the first ring, his hand trembling so hard he almost dropped it. "Mr. Vance." It was Eleanor Sterling again, her voice still crisp, but with a new warmth to it. "This is Eleanor Sterling from the Foundation. We have some news regarding your submission for Mr. Presley's event." Leo held his breath, his knuckles white as he clutched the phone. He closed his eyes, a tear pricking at the corner. He had done it. His stomach fluttered with 1,000 butterflies. "Oh my goodness," he stammered. "Thank you. Thank you so much." I don't know what to say." Eleanor chuckled softly. "You don't need to say anything, Mr. Vance. Your sandwich spoke for itself. Unique, comforting, and remarkably soulful. The judges were particularly impressed was the depths of Presley's and the injury aid tenue torn," he asked it. He ensured it met with Mr. Presley's personal preferences. You passed with flying colors. Would like you to prepare for fur? Yes, absolutely. Paul, be ready. Leo practically yelled into the phone. Eleanor gave him the final instructions, reminded him of the strict confidentiality, and then wished him good luck. As he hung up the phone, Leo stood in the middle of his quiet apartment, a triumphant grin splitting his face. He felt like he could float. He looked at his Elvis posters at the king's iconic smile. I did it, Elvis, he whispered, a lump forming in his throat. I did it for you. He didn't sleep a wink that night. Instead, he spent it cleaning his kitchen to an immaculate shine, organizing his tools and mentally rehearsing every single step of making the king's comfort. The waiting was over, the chosen one was him, and the royal delivery was just hours away. The morning after the call was a whirlwind of joyous energy and intense preparation. Leo woke up before dawn, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He didn't feel tired, he felt invigorated, electrified. This was the day. He opened the diner an hour early, buzzing with suppressed excitement. When Brenda and Mr. Henderson arrived for their usual breakfast, they immediately noticed the change in him. You look like you won the lottery, Leo, Brenda exclaimed, eyeing his wide, unrestrained grin. Leo, unable to contain himself, leaned in conspiratorially. Better than the lottery. Brenda, the king's comfort. It's going to Elvis, Brenda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Henderson actually dropped his newspaper. No kidding, son, that's incredible. 50 of them, Leo whispered, practically dancing behind the counter. They're delivering the ingredients today, and pickup is tonight. Oh, and I have to keep it a secret, so don't tell anyone, he added, realizing he just told 2 of his most frequent customers. Brenda clapped her hands together. A secret, honey? This is Memphis. Nothing stays a secret for long, but don't you worry, our lips are sealed. This is huge, Leo. I always knew you had it in you. The news, despite Leo's plea for secrecy, seemed to radiate from him like a warm glow. Customers who came in later sensed his renewed energy, his infectious excitement. He still made their usual breakfast orders, but each pancake flip, each coffee pour, felt infused with a new purpose. Around noon, a discreet, unmarked van pulled up outside the diner. 2 men in crisp uniforms carried in multiple insulated containers and boxes filled with the highest quality ingredients Leo had ever seen. The buttermilk bread was still warm, freshly baked. The bananas were perfectly ripe, unblemished. The bacon was from a specific renowned farm. And the mascarpone cheese was imported, creamy beyond belief. Leo meticulously checked every item, his eyes shining. This wasn't just about good food. It was about perfection, about honoring the king with every single detail. He spent the afternoon preparing everything. He roasted fresh peanuts for his smoky soul butter, ensuring the exact right consistency and flavor. He candied batch after batch of the thick-cut bacon, the scent of brown sugar, bourbon and cayenne filling the diner. He mixed the Heartbreak Heaven mascarpone core, tasting it to ensure its subtle sweetness and velvety texture were just right. He carefully sliced the buttermilk bread, making sure each slice was uniform. He grilled the bananas to a perfect golden char, laying them out on cooling racks. His kitchen, usually a place of busy chaos, became a focused, almost meditative space. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow through the diner windows, Leo started assembling the sandwiches. He worked with precision, each movement practiced and deliberate. He spread the smoky soul butter on one side, the grilled bananas and rock and roll bacon on the other, then piped a small dollop of the Heartbreak Heaven core in the center. Pressed them together gently, then carefully placed them on the griddle. The smell that filled the diner was intoxicating, a symphony of sweet, savory, smoky, and creamy. Cooked them slowly, allowing the bread to become golden brown and crisp, the inside melting into a cohesive, delicious whole. As each sandwich was perfectly grilled, he carefully wrapped it in specially designed heat-retaining paper that kept it warm and fresh. Each one a miniature masterpiece crafted with love and dedication. As he placed the last one into the insulated container, a profound sense of satisfaction washed over him. He stepped back, wiping his hands on his apron, and looked at the stack of containers. This wasn't just food. It was an offering, a testament to a dream realized. Just as the last sandwich was secured, the unmarked van returned. This time, a different man, older and with a serious demeanor, entered the diner. He introduced himself as Mr. Wallace, the chief of security for the event. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice deep and calm. "Are the sandwiches ready?" "Yes, sir," Leo replied, his voice firm, despite the tremor in his hands. "All 50 of the King's Comfort. Perfectly prepared." Mr. Wallace inspected the containers briefly. Opening one to peek inside, he didn't taste or touch. His eyes just scanned, assessing. "Excellent. We'll take them from here. And remember, absolute discretion is paramount. No mention of this event or Mr. Presley's presence to anyone." "Understood, sir." Leo nodded. His promise. As the containers were carried out, Leo felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. His masterpiece was gone on its way to the king. He stood in his now quiet kitchen, the delicious aromas still lingering in the air. The hard part was over now. All that was left was the king's verdict. He could only imagine Elvis. Late at night, perhaps after a trimance, would he bring that smile to his face, that feeling of pure, unadulterated joy? He hoped so with every fiber of his being. The chosen one had delivered now. The king would judge. Leo closed up shop, the silence of the empty space amplifying his nervousness. He tried to watch TV, but his mind kept replaying every step of the sandwich-making process. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He finally just sat on his sofa, listening to "Always on My Mind." Imagining the private gala, he pictured the hotel ballroom, hushed and elegant. He saw Elvis, perhaps in a sharp suit, interacting with guests, his charm and charisma filling the room. He imagined the end of the evening, the guests slowly departing, and then the moment the King's Comfort would be brought out. He wondered who would serve it to Elvis. Would it be on a silver platter? Would Elvis be tired, hungry? Would he even notice the details Leo had poured into it? He eventually drifted off to sleep, only to be woken by a strange sensation. Not a sound, but a feeling. He checked his clock. 3 a.m. His phone was ringing. His heart jumped into his throat. An unfamiliar number again. He answered, his voice raspy. "Mr. Vance?" A new voice, softer and more melodious than Eleanor Sterling's, asked. "This is Priscilla Bothy, Presley's assistant. Mr. Presley would like to speak with you." Leo froze. Priscilla, Elvis himself. His mind went blank. There was a brief pause. Then a familiar, warm, deep voice filled his ear. "Leo, is this Leo Vance?" It was him, the king. Leo's breath hitched. He felt like he was going to faint. "Well, Leo," Elvis began, his voice a low, friendly rumble that somehow still commanded attention. "I just finished the most extraordinary sandwich I've ever tasted in my life." Leo's eyes welled up. He swallowed hard. A lump in his throat. I'm so glad. It's truly an honor." "An honor, Leo. The honor is all mine." Elvis chuckled, a rich, genuine sound. "This King's Comfort of yours, it's pure magic. I've had my share of peanut butter and banana sandwiches, you know. They're a comfort, a classic. But yours is a revelation." Leo felt the warmth spread through his chest, a feeling more profound than any culinary award. This was it. This was the moment he had dreamed of. That smoky soul butter and that candied bacon. Lord Leo, that bacon is a work of art. And the grilled bananas, just perfect. But that little creamy bit in the middle, that's what sealed it. That's pure genius. Heartbreak heaven. Sir Leo managed a wide smile breaking across his face. "Heartbreak heaven," Elvis repeated, savoring the name. "It surely is, son. It's got soul, Leo. It's got heart. It tasted like home, like Memphis, but with a whole new rhythm. You captured something special in there? Leo was speechless, tears silently streaming down his face. To hear these words from Elvis Presley, the man he had admired his entire life, was beyond anything he had ever imagined. So Leo, Elvis continued, his voice shifting slightly, a hint of playful mischief entering his tone. A sandwich this good deserves a reward. More than just payment, of course. Something that fits the man who created a culinary masterpiece worthy of the king. Leo blinked, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. A reward, Mr. Presley, sir. Your words are reward enough, truly. Nonsense. Elvis laughed heartily. A creation like this demands a reward that's equally, unfairly, a little bit, just maybe a little bit hilarious. Something that keeps the spirit of the king's comfort alive. Leo's heart pounded with anticipation. What could Elvis possibly offer? A signed guitar, a visit to Graceland. Something grand. Surely. Muff. Now listen closely, Leo, Elvis said, his voice dropping slightly as if sharing a great secret. For this culinary marvel I hereby declare you my official sandwich sensei for life. Leo chuckled nervously. Sandwich sensei. Indeed, Elvis confirmed. A sequined PB&B scented scarf as a tablecloth that was unexpected and definitely hilarious. He could almost smell it now. And secondly, Elvis continued, clearly enjoying Leo's stunned. Every time you make a sandwich for a truly special customer at your diner, you must place that sandwich on us. Bulmas, war. But wait, there's more, Sensei, Elvis added, his voice twinkling. The very first blessing, which you'll receive next week, will be a full dramatic reading of the ingredients list of the King's Comfort Sandwich, performed by yours truly, in my king's voice. Leo burst out laughing, a genuine heartfelt laugh that bubbled up from deep inside him. It was utterly ridiculous, completely unexpected and perfectly wonderfully Elvis. A sequined scented scarf as a tablecloth, a sandwich, ritual, and monthly pie-note blessings, featuring a dramatic reading of ingredients by the king himself. It was the most hilarious, personal, and heartwarming reward he could ever have imagined. He wasn't just cooking for Elvis, he was now officially part of his quirky, legendary world. The laughter, once it started, was hard to stop. Leo leaned against the wall of his apartment, phone still pressed to his ear, giggling like a schoolboy. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a full, uninhibited guffaw, the kind that made his belly ache. Peanut butter and banana-scented sequined scarf as a tablecloth. Leo managed to get out, tears of mirth streaming down his face. Elvis laughed too, a warm, resonant sound that made Leo feel like he was right there in the room with him. That's right, Sensei. You'll be the only man in the world with such a sacred textile. Imagine the stories. And those blessings, think of it every month. A little piece of me just for you and your very special customers, Mr. Presley, Leo said finally, catching his breath. That is the most wonderfully hilarious and amazing thing I've ever heard. Thank you, truly, it's more than I could have ever dreamed of. Good, Elvis said, his voice softening slightly. 'Cause, Leo, it's not just a silly thing. It's a symbol. It means you touched something real. It makes sicture. And that's what I want for you too. I want your diner to be a place of experience. A place where people feel something special. That's reward, it's about connection. Leo felt a lump form in his throat again, this time not from laughter, but from overwhelming emotion. Elvis wasn't just being whimsical. He was being genuinely thoughtful, seeing beyond the initial humor to the deeper meaning. King recognizing his passion and wanting to share a piece of his own unique world with him. I understand, Sir, Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise I'll honor the scarf and the blessings. Every special sandwich will be a tribute. I know you will, Sensei, Elvis replied, a smile evident in his voice. Now I gotta go. Got a busy day tomorrow, but Leo, you keep that magic alive, and I'll be looking forward to our monthly communication via guying. With a final, warm farewell, Elvis hung up. Leo stood there, in the dark, silent apartment, the phone slowly lowering from his ear. He felt lightheaded, as if he just had the most vivid, beautiful dream. But it wasn't a dream, it was real. He had spoken to Elvis. Elvis had loved his sandwich. And Elvis had given him the most hilariously, profoundly personal reward imaginable. He imagined the scarf, sequined, probably a little gaudy, definitely peanut butter and banana scented. He imagined pulling it out for a special customer, carefully laying it on the table, and then playing a Pymach record of Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. Dramatically reading an ingredients list, the sheer absurdity of it made him chuckle again. Beneath the humor, there was a deep current of warmth and gratitude. He couldn't wait to tell Brenda and Mr. Henderson. He knew they'd think he'd gone mad, but he also knew they'd understand, they'd see the heart behind the hilarity. The phone call had lasted only a few minutes, but it had changed everything. Leo felt a surge of confidence he hadn't possessed before. He had proven to himself and to the king that he was capable of creating something legendary. He spent the rest of the pre-dawn hours unable to sleep, but not from nerves, from pure, unadulterated joy. He started thinking about which customer would get the first scarf treatment. Maybe old Mrs. Gable, who always ordered the same thing but always shared a kind word. Or the young couple who came in for their first date and looked so nervous and sweet. He wanted to share this joy, this unique connection to the king, with the people who made his diner special. He also started thinking about the logistics. Where would he keep the scarf? How would he ensure it stayed peanut butter and banana scented? Or if it would naturally fade, how would he lovingly reapply the scent in a subtle, non-messy way? He'd need a good one, something that would do justice to Elvis's voice. He looked around his apartment, seeing it with new eyes. It wasn't just his home anymore. It was a place blessed by the king's laughter, the repository of a truly unique story. His life, which had felt a little stuck, a little ordinary, was now infused with a touch of magic, a hint of legend, and a whole lot of hilarious possibility. The sun began to peek through his window, casting faint light on his Elvis posters. He smiled a genuine, easy smile. He was ready for whatever came next. He was Elvis's sandwich sensei, and he had a feeling life was about to get a whole lot more interesting. The very next day, a package arrived at Leo's diner. It was a large, sturdy box, marked with a discreet but elegant seal. Leo's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside, nestled among layers of tissue paper, was a rolled-up length of fabric. He carefully unwrapped it. It was indeed a scarf, and it was exactly as Elvis had described. It was made of a rich, velvety material, a deep royal blue shimmering with thousands of tiny, perfectly sewn sequins. It was longer and wider than any scarf Leo had ever seen, more like a luxurious stole. And yes, unmistakably it carried a faint but distinct scent of peanut butter and banana. It was utterly gloriously absurd. Leo held it up, a wide grin spreading across his face. It was magnificent and completely impractical. As a tablecloth, but that was the point. It was Elvis. Later that week, this one contained a brand new vintage-style record player gleaming with chrome and wood, along with a small, beautifully designed Pymach record. The label on the record simply read, "The King's Blessing, Volume 1, The King's Comfort. Ingredients, a dramatic reading by Elvis Presley." Leo nearly fainted. He immediately set up the record player on a small, sturdy shelf in the diner away from the hustle of the kitchen, but visible to special customers. Polished the scarf reverently, then draped it over a small, custom-made table. He set up in a quiet corner of the diner, the King's Corner. The first customer to experience the hilarious reward was Martha, a sweet old lady who had been coming to Leo's diner for decades. She always ordered the same grilled cheese and a cup of lukewarm tea. Leo decided she deserved something special. He approached her table, a nervous excitement bubbling inside him. "Martha," he began, "today I have a very special treat for you. You're going to be the first to experience the King's Comfort Sandwich, prepared in a very unique way." Martha, looking confused, watched as Leo carefully laid the sequined scarf over her small table. Her eyes widened. "Good heavens, Leo, what in the world is that? It smells like bananas," Leo chuckled. "It's a gift from a very special person, Martha. A blessing. Now if you'll just wait a moment." He went back to the kitchen and prepared a perfect King's Comfort sandwich. He brought it out, setting it gently on the center of the scarf. Then with a flourish, he walked over to the record player. "And now for the blessing," Leo announced, pressing play. Crackle of the needle on the pommel filled the quiet diner. Then the unmistakable deep velvety voice of Elvis Presley filled the air. "Good evening, dear friends." Elvis's voice boomed from the speakers. "This is your king speaking to you from Graceland. And tonight, we gather to celebrate a culinary masterpiece, the King's Comfort Sandwich, crafted by the one and only Leo Vance, my official sandwich sensei." Martha's jaw dropped. She looked from Leo to the record player, then to the scarf. Elvis continued, his voice adopting a theatrical, almost operatic tone. "Next, the rock and roll bacon, candied with bourbon's fire and cayenne's playful kiss, a crunch that truly sings." Leo watched Martha's face. It was a mixture of utter disbelief, confusion, and then a slow, dawning smile. "Ah, but we mustn't forget the Heartbreak Heaven core." Elvis's voice crooned dramatically, a mascarpone melting into a creamy sigh, a whisper of vanilla, a kiss against milk. Finally, the grilled bananas caramelized with passion, a sweet melody to crown this majestic creation. Elvis concluded with a flourish. "So eat well, my friends, and let the King's Comfort fill your soul with joy and your heart with Memphis magic. Thank you very much." A final theatrical flourish of music played, then faded out. Silence filled the diner, broken only by Martha's slow, deliberate chewing. Martha swallowed, then looked at Leo, her eyes wide with wonder. "Leo," she said, her voice a hushed whisper, Was that Elvis Presley reading the ingredients of my sandwich?" Leo beamed. "Yes, Martha, it was." She shook her head. A tear escaping her eye. "Well, I'll be. I've never had a grilled cheese quite like that, and I've certainly never had one blessed by the king himself. This is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me in this diner." She took another bite, a blissful smile on her face. From that day on, the King's Corner became the most coveted spot in Leo's diner. The story of the sequined scarf and the monthly Elvis blessings spread like wildfire through Memphis. People came from all over, not just for the legendary King's Comfort sandwich, but to experience the unique, hilarious, and deeply heartwarming ritual. Leo found immense joy in surprising his customers, in watching their faces light up with disbelief and then delight. As Elvis's voice filled the diner, the scarf, initially a joke, became a symbol of his success, his unique connection to a legend, and the sheer joy he brought to others through his food. The monthly Pingo blessings, each one a different croaky message or reading from Elvis, became cherished possessions, proof that his dream hadn't just come true, but had become something even more fantastical than he could have ever imagined. His diner was no longer just a place for comfort food. It was a destination, a place where the magic of Elvis lived on, one blessed sandwich at a time. Life at Leo's diner was never the same after the hilarious reward. The small, unassuming eatery transformed into a quirky, beloved landmark in Memphis. The story of the King's Comfort sandwich, the sequined peanut butter and banana-scented scarf, and the monthly Elvis Bleckings spread far and wide. Fueled by local news stories and word of mouth, the King's Corner became the diner's most popular table, reserved for customers celebrating special occasions or those who simply needed a dose of unexpected joy. Leo would carefully lay out the scarf, which he lovingly washed and rescented with natural banana and peanut oils to maintain its unique aroma, and then, with a flourish, play the latest sandwich blessing from the vintage record player. Each month a new comic record would arrive sent from Elvis's personal office. Some featured Elvis singing a short, improvised tune about culinary delight. Others had him giving playful advice on how to properly enjoy a sandwich. Bite with gusto, friends. Let the flavors dance. One memorable blessing was a dramatic reading of the entire menu of a classic 1950s diner, performed with Elvis's characteristic flair. Each blessing was unique, personal, and utterly wonderfully Elvis. Leo's Diner became a place of pilgrimage for Elvis fans, foodies, and curious tourists alike. Lines often stretched down the block, and Leo had to hire extra staff to keep up with the demand. He expanded the diner slightly, but he refused to lose its cozy, authentic charm. He still worked the griddle himself, making sure every King's Comfort sandwich was made to perfection. His dream of creating legendary food had come true, but in a way he never could have foreseen. It wasn't about Michelin stars or fancy accolades. It was about genuine connection, shared joy, and the unique magic that only Elvis could inspire. Leo himself changed too. He was no longer just a passionate dreamer. He was a successful entrepreneur, a local celebrity, and most importantly, Elvis's official sandwich sensei for life. He still wore his worn blue suede jacket, but now he wore it with an air of quiet confidence and a permanent contented smile. The sequined scarf, despite its impracticality, became a cherished heirloom. It was a physical manifestation of Elvis's gratitude and humor, a reminder that the greatest rewards in life aren't always what you expect. It was a symbol of kindness, of recognizing talent in an unexpected place, and of the enduring power of a legend to bring joy. Years passed. Elvis continued to send his monthly blessings, each one a delightful surprise, keeping the unique bond between the king and his sandwich sensei alive. The records accumulated, a precious one of a kind collection that told a story of a friendship forged over a perfect sandwich. One quiet afternoon, after the lunch rush had ended, Leo sat at the King's Corner, carefully folding the sequined scarf. He picked up the very first Pango blessing, the one where Elvis dramatically read the ingredients list. Closed his eyes, remembering that morale phone call, the laughter, the warmth. He thought about all the people who had come through his doors, all the smiles he had seen, all the moments of shared joy. Thought about the small, humble diner that had become a place of legend, all because of a dream, a sandwich, and the King's hilarious, heartwarming reward. Leo had learned that true greatness wasn't just about the food itself, but about the experience it created, the memories it sparked, and the connections it forged. He had captured the spirit of Elvis in a sandwich, and in return, Elvis had given him a legacy of laughter, warmth, and the sweet, soulful taste of pure comfort. His life, once just simmering, was now boiling over with happiness and purpose. And as the sun set over Memphis, casting a warm glow over Leo's Diner, he knew, deep in his heart, that he was living his perfect, hilarious, heartwarming dream, one blessed sandwich at a time. King's Comfort had not just nourished a legend, it had created one right there in the heart of Memphis.